impi chiryanshita yakusalanga yakumana baisa mukutube paikara chiryanshita yakusalanga yakwana baisa
on our road to 13th August 2026, and welcome to episode 2 of our election tips and insights. I am Kabanse. My name is Kabanse, and of course today's episode is quite interesting. Just to share a little story. So in the 2021 elections, I happened to have been accredited at a slightly higher level, a slightly higher level. And because I was accredited at a slightly higher level, I was able to access different localities, different polling stations during the voting process. That was in the 2021 election. So I was able to move from one place to the next and be able to observe or monitor what was happening in the election process in multiple localities. And one of the things that you would find every now and then in 1 or 2 or 3 polling stations is certain voters that felt more entitled than the other voters. We had commanders, for example. I went to one polling station where a commander came to vote and they wanted to cut the line and go in front, yet they came late. They just came, commander na besa guys, commander we bapeni wa vote wa commander ndi. This commander guy wanted to go in front and cut the line and go ahead of everyone else who had been on the queue from morning. And luckily, the law enforcers who were there were equal to the task, so they just went to this guy and told him no kunotakwa if you have a commander, if you have a shani uri onso muntu afuiro kwimina mulaini nokukonkamo. So there are times that we have these guys that would come when it's voting day, and because they are a commander or whatever, they want to cut the line. But you see, one thing we need to know is that it's not every person, every Jim and Jack who can just come and disturb and dictate how the election should happen. There are different authorized or accredited people that are supposed to be present or to control how the voting is going to proceed. If you remember, I think in 2021 also we had another incident where an unauthorized person was found at the National Total Center. Some suspected foreigner of some sort was found in the IT room, yet they were not authorized to be in that room. So it is for this reason that today's episode is going to focus on key election officials and stakeholders. Who are these key people that are authorized or accredited to be in an election center at a particular time? So that's what today's episode is about, and it's important so that you know who you should expect when you walk into a polling station or any election facility, and for you to be able to identify whether those people are authorized or accredited to be there or not. And the starting point maybe would be, what is accreditation in an election? What is accreditation? So accreditation is simply the authority or certification for one to be recognized in a nomination center, in a polling station, or in a totaling center. And this accreditation or this authority is only granted by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. So it's basically a process by which the Electoral Commission of Zambia grants authority or certification to any person so that they are able to access the nomination centers, the polling stations, or any other election facility. And so that is what accreditation entails when it comes to an election. So who are these key people or key stakeholders that are authorized or accredited or allowed to be in an election facility? To start with, we have members of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. These are mandated by the Constitution and the Electoral Act to be present or to be able to supervise, coordinate, and run an election. So members of the commission by default are allowed to access the election center and the National Totaling Center or the nomination centers because they are mandated and appointed to do so by the commission. We also have a person under the Electoral Commission that we call the Chief Electoral Officer. And for this year, we have Mr. Brown Kasaro. I know we usually hear about him on the news, who is the executive head of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. This is an authorized person who is responsible for coordinating and overseeing the elections. Then at district level, we have electoral officers also that we call the district electoral officers. And these people are in charge of all electoral activities at district level. They are in charge of all electoral activities at district level. So the district electoral officer usually is the town clerk or the council secretary or who is present in that particular district. And that's why you see politicians must desist from threatening or intimidating civil servants who are mandated by law to carry out electoral duties. So it's very misplaced for any politician to intimidate these people because they are mandated and they are supposed to be there. So the district electoral officers who are town clerks or council secretaries are in charge of the election at district level. Then we have the returning officer. This is basically just the person responsible to the electoral officer in matters of field administration or of coordinating the election at constituency level. So these returning officers are key people who are mandated and accredited by the Electoral Commission to be there, not by any political party, but by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. So these are mandated by law to be able to carry out their duties. So no politician, no individual should threaten or intimidate these officers. Another important person that most of us are familiar with when it comes to an election is the presiding officer. The presiding officer is basically the person in charge of the polling station. This is the person in charge of the polling station. This is the person who conducts the elections according to the electoral procedures. Okay? This presiding officer is the one who ensures that, for example, that the stocks for the elections, the materials are there and are adequate before any election. You know, they take care of the equipment, the materials under their custody. They make sure that no material is misused or lands into wrong hands. And also, remember, the returning officer is the person who communicates should there be any challenges, any issues in a particular polling station. They record the proceedings, and also they are responsible for counting the votes at any polling station. So not only counting, but the returning officer is the person who is in charge of announcing the results once the election is over. So the returning officer is a very key person, is the main person who conducts the election at a particular polling station, and these should be accorded the respect, and they are the people that give you the instructions on what to do or what not to do, because they are basically the supervisor in charge of that particular polling station. So as an electorate, as a voter, once you are given instructions by the presiding officers, it is your duty to obey and oblige and follow the instructions for the easier and smooth conduct of the election. We also have the people we call the polling assistants. Now, the polling assistant is basically just the people that help the presiding officer to conduct the election. So the polling assistant will usually assign different functions depending on the table where they are seated. As you can see, I think on this photo that I'm about to share, I think let me just share this photo. We have the duty of the polling assistant, number one, the one who sits on table one, is basically responsible for verifying the identity of the voters in the register. So when you walk in a polling station, your first stop, you go on table one, you go and check that your credentials, your identity for you to be in that polling station are correct. Number two, they mark the voter's thumb on table two with indelible ink. So bakufaka inki uchikumo oku osati awe ni masatanisti batifaka inki. No. That ink is basically to show that you have voted and you don't vote for 3, 4, 5 times in one election. So on table 2, they are going to put the indelible ink on your thumbprint to show that you have already voted. And then we have the table 3, where we have a polling assistant who issues out the ballot papers. So they are going to give you 4 ballot papers, okay? Or let me say 3 ballot papers, but mostly let me say 4 ballot papers, because we vote for the president, we vote for the MP, we vote for the mayor or the council chairperson, and we vote for the councillor. So on table 3, the polling assistant who sits on that table, they are the ones that are responsible for giving you those ballot papers that you're going to use to cast your vote. And they are also responsible for directing voters where to cast the vote. Okay, so they'll tell you, apapitani so, mugayambira so, mzinguluke so, or mwende kumbuyo kwa voting booth ili paja, now you can cast your vote. So they literally assist the polling officer to conduct the election without any disturbances. Another important group of people that we need to be aware of as we walk into that polling station are the uniformed staff, the security officers appointed to be in that polling station. So what is important is for you to identify which police officer or security officer is accredited at that polling station. And the only way to know that they are accredited to be there is you can check their ID or their accreditation card, which is issued by Electoral Commission of Zambia, to show that they are supposed to be there. So, wakutali where there are no police stations. When you see these uniformed police officers in the polling station, don't feel intimidated. Osayopa, siwanabwera okubira kawalala, siwanabwera ochitachani, abwera chaboka sunga mtendere. Their role is to maintain law and order in the vicinity and within the polling station. That is the job of these uniformed police officers. They are our friends. They have not come there to intimidate you, no, but basically to provide security during the election. They provide security to the election staff, to the equipment, the materials. They perform other election duties that may be assigned to them by the presiding officer. If there is need to do so. So, especially soba kumishesu kulale kutakuma police station. Not kulonda asamvela manta osayopa when you see a police officer during the voting day. They are there to protect you, they are there to protect everyone and to ensure that the election goes smoothly. And another group of people that we find at the polling station are the election and polling agents. So these observe the election on behalf of the candidates or on behalf of the party. So these are also appointed by the under the electoral regulations, and they are supposed to be accredited by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, meaning they are supposed to provide proof and certification that they are legally appointed and supposed to be in that polling station as a polling agent who is appointed by the candidate, or as an election agent who represents the interests of the candidate at constituency or ward levels. So these polling agents or election agents or party agents, whatever you want to call them, they are also supposed to be accredited. And they are supposed to be accredited at least 4 days before an election. They are supposed to be accredited. So each party, each person is allowed at least 2 election agents representing a particular candidate in a polling station. And they are supposed to be accredited 4 days before. At national level, each party is entitled to 5 party officials to represent that particular party. Okay? And these are also supposed to be accredited by the Electoral Commission at least 4 days before an election. The same applies to the constituent level. Each candidate, each party is allowed a maximum of 5 officials at constituency level at the constituency totaling center to be able to monitor the elections. Then we also have independent election observers who just help in gathering information and bring to the attention of the presiding officer any issues that may be observed during an election at the end of an election. And finally, don't forget, we also have the media, journalists. The role of the media, the role of the journalists is not fault-finding or kukungo sakira you have a bias towards a certain political party. No, the role of the media is to publicize electoral activities without any impartiality. By so doing, the important role that the media plays is to help the electorate to make informed decisions. Okay? The media should provide news of the electoral process up to the declaration of the results. And the media can only and should only broadcast confirmed election results, not rumors, not no takambana bandani wakamba kuti ndandi wawina before. No, the media must be responsible and make sure that they only do the right thing during an election. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have the electorates. You and me, the people that just go there to vote without doing anything. These are persons who are registered as voters. And for you as an electorate, what you need to show proof that you are indeed a voter is that you need your green national registration card and your voter's card. And your name must be registered in the voters register. The presiding officer or any person involved in the election is not allowed to authorize any person, whether ni achima ya kunyumba, whether ni mwana, whether ni mchani afune chaya bwera sonjere, to see how the election is going. If these people are not accredited and allowed and authorized to be in that particular polling station, no unauthorized person is supposed to be present in any election facility if they are not accredited and they have no proof to show that they are accredited. So it's very important that we understand who is authorized to be in that particular polling station, what their role is, and what they'll be doing throughout the election process. So those are the key people that we need to know, that we are going to meet, that we are going to come into contact with throughout this election period, and let's accord them the support, the respect that they deserve for them to be able to conduct this election in a free, fair, and credible way that is truly reflective of the true democratic value of Zambia and the Zambian people. That wraps up our episode for today. My name is Kabanse. We'll talk to you again in our next episode.
Kwatitebo basakala nyongo ngabayiringanya kwatitebo bapompwe